What's up guys, my name is Carl and welcome to Tech Hunter. So I am back again with another monthly builds video. It's been a while since I've done one of these, since April I believe was my first and last one. So my monthly tradition hasn't gone very well so far, but that was mainly due to the release of kind of new CPUs from AMD and new GPUs from AMD, kind of being in that time period where it's kind of hard to recommend somebody to go and build a PC when maybe a month or two later that kind of processor may well be near enough redundant, depending on how much kind of performance game we was going to see. Obviously now we know, since obviously they've been released, and what we can expect from these processors and graphics cards, so it's kind of a bit easier to advise and kind of recommend something to somebody based on these new AMD Zen 2 CPUs as well as the Navi GPUs. And that is something I'm going to be kind of focusing on in today's video. Obviously there's been a lot of hype around these kind of processors and graphics cards, so I feel like it's justifiable to recommend some builds for you guys and what you can expect for different kind of price points. I believe my chosen price points are 900, I believe 1400 and 2600 pounds. All of my figures are in pounds, but obviously you can just check the links in the description below and then you can load it up in your preferred country through PC Part Picker, and it should automatically populate it depending on your location with retailers that it recommends for you to check out as well. So that's one of the good things about it. I'm sticking with pounds because it's my currency. I know it. I know generally how it kind of scales towards other currencies like the euro and US dollars. So if generally the pounds prices are very similar to what you may expect to see in euros or dollars. So take that with a pinch of salt, and generally if it's a £1,500 gaming PC, it's pretty much close to $1,500 as well. So that's one thing I prefer, and I've got to support my kind of hometown. A lot of my viewers are actually US based, so a huge thank you to those who are from the US and click these videos. Obviously, like I said, just click that link in the description down below and you'll be able to load up the US version of all these parts you are about to see. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we're working with, and the first build we're looking at is the £900 gaming PC, and this is it on your screens right now. So obviously we're working with a Ryzen 5 3600 CPU, which I actually have right here, and a B450 Tomahawk motherboard, as well as a RX 5700. They're kind of the main key components of this build. I've also got a B450 Tomahawk motherboard sat on that test bench just over my shoulder, so hopefully we may be able to actually put this one into practice in the future. But right, let's get into the nitty gritty and work our way through this kind of build. So up first we do have that Ryzen 5 3600 CPU. It's 6 cores, 12 threads, it's overclockable, it comes with a cooler as well, which is pretty darn good. And I've seen a lot of kind of video reviews online already where this thing is basically self-overclocking thanks to that Precision Boost Overdrive technology which AMD have included with Ryzen CPUs this year. It is self-overclocking with that Wraith Stealth cooler, or Wraith Spire, I can't remember which one it has. And it is performing very, very well. A big uplift over the Ryzen 5 2600. Maybe not on par with its kind of Intel brethren. I think it's the 9600K that it's up against as far as gaming goes, but as anything other than gaming, the Ryzen 5 has it beat hands down, and will probably last longer than the 6-core, 6-thread Intel equivalent. So for the motherboard, we've gone for the B450 Tomahawk, kind of a cheap, no-thrills motherboard, but it packs in great power delivery, very reliable. Tons and tons of people recommend this motherboard, and I'll be one of them. I've got one set up behind me. It's a good kind of well-made motherboard. It looks great. We've got the 4 DIMM slots. We've got 2 PCI slots, and the PCI 16X slot is armored, so it's a little bit more rigid. It's less likely to kind of break, say if you're constantly removing your GPU or kind of expansion cards. It's also got good power delivery, and it's got not many SATA ports, so if you are looking at kind of populating this board with a ton of maybe hard drives or SATA based SSDs, you may want to look at maybe getting a different motherboard if that is your way. But do bear in mind this does have an M.2 slot on it, so I'd encourage you to make use of that as maybe like an NVMe boot drive or even a SATA based boot drive, just using that M.2 slot. Well, because you don't need any cables, and that is one thing I love about these drives, is you just plug them into motherboard, that's it. No power cables to run to them, no SATA cables to run to them. Cleaner and easier cable management all around. You also get included a bit of kind of red LED lighting on the side, and I believe it does have an RGB header right at the bottom left of this motherboard, so if you want to add some bling to your PC, this motherboard is more than capable. And it's around £90 in the UK, pretty much everywhere. Maybe a little bit more, maybe £10 more in other sites. So a good board and a good solid choice. So to go with that B450 board, we've got some Trident Z non-RGB memory. If you want the RGB, you're gonna have to pay a little bit more. But for me, this is a great looking RAM anyway. It's kind of that stealth gunmetal effect with the kind of red trim. So it's a good looking memory. And it is 16 gigs at 3200 speeds for just £73. I did see a video earlier from, I believe it was Tech Yes City, about the DDR4 prices are potentially going to be rising very soon. So it is a good time to pick up some DDR4 memory if you are thinking about starting a new PC. And this stuff from G.Skill is always widely regarded as very popular and kind of very, very reliable. It also it looks good as well. So you can't complain when something looks good and performs. For our storage though, Intel is here. In case you were wondering, this is always going to be about AMD. Don't worry, Intel has arrived to save the day in case you are kind of desperate for your Intel needs. The 660p series is just over a 1TB NVMe SSD. It is based on the QLC NAND, so it's maybe not the most consistent read and write speeds, but it is definitely faster than SATA. Kind of very consistent once you kind of hit that peak, and then it drops down a bit. For your kind of short burst tasks like loading up programs and web browsers or starting up the PC, it's going to be very, very quick. It's just those maybe extended read and writes, it may well start to decline a little bit. But generally, unless you're doing tons and tons and tons of big file transfers all the time, maybe look at getting a more kind of stable, like maybe a Samsung 970 Evo SSD, which will give you a lot solid kind of read and writes for long extended periods. But really, if you're not doing that very often and you're just kind of gaming and, I don't know, watching some YouTube videos or maybe a bit of light video editing or Photoshop, on this NVMe SSD from Intel, you're going to get great kind of speeds and load up times with all those applications. And for just £100 for 1TB of kind of solid state storage, you generally cannot complain. I think this is even cheaper than a 1TB SATA SSD. So yeah, and no cables and no wires. So that's a good enough reason for me to buy it. And if you don't like Intel and you really don't want Intel in your PC, I think it's the Crucial P1 is a very, very similar option, and you can kind of pick them up for a very similar price, and then there you go. No Intel in your system anyway. For the GPU, we've got the RX 5700. This is something I may recommend not picking up right now. Maybe look to buy one maybe in August time, as because that is when AMD have allowed third parties to release their own kind of custom designs that don't use this kind of blower style cooler, which just gets very hot, very loud, and doesn't kind of let the GPU overclock very far because of those kind of thermal limits. So for $339, it is a very, very good card for what it can do. It can outperform a very similarly priced RTX 2060, and it does look quite good at the same time, but it's going to be loud and it's going to be hot. I recommend the 5700, just maybe not the founders or reference design, and maybe look at picking one up later down the line with a custom cooler attached to it. For the case, I've gone for the Phanteks Eclipse P350X. I've never built in this case, but I always recommend it. It's got Phanteks build quality, so it's a solid in design. It's kind of very minimal in kind of aesthetics. At the same time, it offers also quite a lot in the way of aesthetics. You've got tempered glass, you've got that kind of power supply shroud at the bottom, and you do also get the kind of RGB light strips on the front and the side. I'm a big fan of the one on the side. I do like that just underneath the glass, as well as obviously you get kind of a very kind of open design interior. Airflow is not the best on the front, I'll admit that, but it does have kind of big intakes on the side of that to allow air to come through, not just completely closed off with nothing at all. So it definitely is there. Also, you do get some fairly decent cable management inside. Not the greatest, it's probably not as good as equivalent NZXT case as far as cable management goes. So if you are desperate for that, maybe look at the H500 for a little bit more money. But this, to me, it looks great. It offers decent airflow. You get a great amount of options. You get those easy to change hard drive bays at the front of the case. Well, I suppose easy to change if you're willing to take the front panel off. And it also comes with, I believe, 2 included fans and a few dust filters as well. Overall, it's a really kind of solid, well-made case. I think I need to start buying some Phanteks cases. I never owned one. I really want to use one, but I never have. So yeah, we'll definitely take a look at them in the future. And as far as the power supply goes, we've got a Be Quiet 500 watt semi-modular unit from obviously Be Quiet. It's the Pure Power 11. I think it's either a Shadow Wings or a Silent Wings fan inside this PSU, so it's super quiet, very efficient from Be Quiet as well. And also you've got the modularity as well, so you can unplug and replug in cables. It's all black, it's all lovely Be Quiet stuff. So yeah, it may be a little bit more expensive than maybe something from the likes of maybe Aerocool, or I believe XFS makes some cheap power supplies. So you may be able to get something which is 80 plus gold, but maybe not as well built or as quiet for around 10 or 20 pounds less if you're really tight on your budget. But overall, I'd say we've got a pretty good build here for just over £900 at the moment. When I priced this up the other day, it was about 892. So something has changed here clearly, which is a bit annoying, but that is the way these kind of builds generally go. On one day, it may be great value. The next day, it may be a little bit different. But obviously, the star of the show is that new Ryzen 5 3600 CPU for £189 in the UK right now. You're getting some seriously awesome performance like that. Out of stock. And that is for the obvious reasons. Great value, great performance. One thing to bear in mind though is, as you can see with this big red warning right at the top of this build, you will need to update the BIOS on that B450 board. So potentially may have to look at going through the kind of thing, it's the AMD kind of BIOS upgrade program where they'll send you a CPU to update your BIOS, and then you have to take that out and then put in your 3600 to make use of that B450 motherboard. It is a bit of kind of messing around and a bit of faff, but at the end of the day, you're maybe potentially saving close to £150 by getting that B450 board instead of an X570 board, which is ready to go, but just a hell of a lot more expensive. Or if you wanted to, you could just kind of buy a CPU off of Amazon, poke it in, upgrade it, and then return that CPU. But I'm not telling you to do that. You could do that. That is an option. It's not what I would recommend you doing, but you can do it. You will likely have to pay for kind of like maybe a restocking fee or a return fee. I don't really know. I've never done it, as I've generally had some CPUs lying around so I can update the BIOS. So yeah, that's an option there if you need it. So moving on to the next build, we have the £1,400 PC based on the Ryzen 7 3700X and that 5700 XT. So obviously compatibility here is no issues. We've got an X570 motherboard as well as that 5700 XT. So let's work our way through this build again. So the star of the show is that Ryzen 7 3700X, 8 cores, 16 threads. It overclocks pretty well with the included cooler. You don't really need one, but for peace of mind and a little bit more kind of quiet and maybe kind of better temperatures over a long period of gaming, I'd recommend picking up something, either a solid air cooler or a kind of all-in-one liquid cooler. For the air cooler, we've gone for the H7 Ultra from CryoRig. We've kind of seen the H7 and the H7 Quad Lumi. This is the Ultra, it's a little bit beefier, and I believe this is a fairly adequate option for under £50. If you wanted to spend a little bit more, maybe £10 or £15 more, you could get the Dark Rock 4 or the Dark Rock Pro 4, but generally you're kind of splitting hairs now, and it's up to you where you want to spend your money for maybe a little bit more kind of better thermal headroom as well as kind of reduced noise. So for the motherboard, this is one of the cheapest X570 motherboards I could find at the moment, and this is the X570 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. So with an X570 motherboard, you are getting a ton of features included. You're getting that PCI Gen 4 slot, you're getting a ton of USB 3.1 Gen 2 support, and also you're getting, with this motherboard, you're getting included IO shield, all built in, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A and C, Type A ports there, 3.2 Gen 1 ports, even get PS2 port and a flash BIOS button. So there is a lot of kind of included features with this cheap X570 motherboard. Believe me or not, this is a cheap motherboard for X570. It is unfortunate that they are costing so much money, and it is a bit of a pain in the bum, to be honest. So yeah, that is what it is. It does have that included kind of chipset cooler on there, which may well add some noise. I can't vouch for that. I've not really seen any kind of videos testing the noise of those kind of chipset fans either. A lot of heard people complain about them. Nobody really tell me how loud they actually are, so maybe we'll find that out in the future. But obviously we are getting RGB Mystic Light included, we are getting a Wi-Fi included, which is maybe an option you can maybe add later on or get rid of to save some money now. Again, a ton of SATA ports, we're getting extra RGB, we're getting addressable RGB headers, you're getting a ton of features as well as good power delivery for that 3700X CPU. So yeah, it's a good, well-built motherboard, but at the end of the day, it is a very expensive option. So if you may want to look at maybe a B450 board or an X470 board for maybe up to 50 to 100 pounds cheaper, and then kind of do that kind of BIOS update by yourself thing, that is definitely a very viable option. For memory, we've got a set of G.Skill Ripjaws 5, 16 gigs, 3600 speeds. So with the latest Ryzen CPUs, they are really enjoying having faster memory. It was always a thing with the old Infinity Fabric on the kind of previous generations, but this time they're making a lot better use of it. I believe it is 3733 is the sweet spot, so I believe 3600 is a good value proposition. It's very close to that, and if you can get some memory with, I believe it's cache latency of around 16 or 17 is kind of a good way to go with this kind of 3600 speeds. If you can get maybe cache latency 14 or maybe some 3000 or 3200 megahertz RAM, that's also a good option if it is a little bit cheaper. So, but for £103, come on, that's pretty good value for that faster RAM. So I can't say much there. For SSD, we've gone for a NVMe drive from Corsair, the MP510. This is a 960 gig M.2 SSD. Like I said earlier, it is similar to that Intel SSD where it will start off really high and then kind of level off because it's not one of those kind of more high-end NVMe SSDs, but it does have great kind of transfer speeds, and it is better than the 3D NAND, which you will find, it is better than the QLC NAND, which you will find in the 660p or the Crucial P1. But for £125 from Corsair themselves, that's a pretty good price if I'm honest, and you'll have plenty of room on this for a good few games, all your kind of software and your OS. So for me, if you start looking at building a PC on a budget, this is a definite option. But if you want to add maybe a 2TB hard drive down the line for £60 at most, that's definitely an option. For the GPU, we've got the RX 5700 XT. Again, another AMD GPU. This thing outperforms the RTX 2060 Super, which it is around the same price or potentially less than at the moment. So that is something to definitely consider. Like I mentioned earlier, it does run hot, it does run loud, so definitely do consider maybe waiting a month before you pick one of these up, and then check out the custom add-in board cards with better coolers, better noise, and just maybe a better design all around. But performance wise, the 5700 XT performs amazing for its price. For the case, I've gone for something a little bit kind of more outlandish, something a little bit out there. This is a case that I really love the looks of. It's the Lian Li PC011 Dynamic, which was made in partnership with Der Bauer. It looks great, like from every angle, the front, the side, the kind of front left funny angle that we had there a minute ago. It's also got great cable management thanks to that kind of 2-compartment design. Everything's kind of hidden behind the motherboard and everything's out of sight. So that's a really good feature for kind of maybe newer PC builders who aren't too keen on the cable management side of things. You can basically just hide everything out the way behind there. So that's a good way to go. It's also got dust filters on the bottom for the kind of intake, and I believe there's a dust filter on the top as well for that 360 rad potentially going up front. And also you can mount it on the side for that kind of pretty cool feature where you can see all the fans, especially if you've got some RGB fans, making some pretty fancy looking effects inside that thing. We also get USB Type-C on the front, which is nice, and we can hook that up straight to our X570 board, so there's no kind of issues there. For our power supply, we've gone for a Seasonic Focus Gold 750 watt 80 plus gold, obviously, fully modular PSU. Seasonic are kind of big dogs in the game. They've been around for years. They make awesome quality power supplies, really reliable, kind of very efficient as well, and generally a lot cheaper than say the other kind of brands, say your EVGA, your Corsair, and your Cooler Masters, even the Be Quiets as well. Seasonic generally come in a lot cheaper than those guys and don't really sacrifice anything for it. Yeah, it may not look as nice, it's got a kind of very gold aesthetic to it, being the Focus Gold, and the cables aren't the nicest looking cables. You could get maybe some nice flat black cables, but at the end of the day, they're all black. They're not horrible to look at. They're not like the ketchup and mustard that we hate. And you get a few cable ties in a little carry bag. So overall, pretty good value if I'm honest. And it's Seasonic. Look at all those reviews. People love Seasonic. And yeah, I've got no complaints with them either. So overall, for just under £1,400, this is a very solid build overall. I'm really kind of impressed with that build. I think it's a great kind of price to performance. You're getting a beast of a CPU, a beast of a GPU, and if you wanted to, you could maybe partner this with a 2070 Super if you have a bit more cash, or a 2080, or even a 2080 Ti. You won't be bottlenecked by that 3700X because that thing is a beast of a CPU. So your kind of limits regards GPUs are endless, but maybe your CPU limits, if you're doing more that requires more than 8 cores and 16 threads, then let me know. Leave your comments down below what you are doing to tax your CPUs. But if you are one of those people that needs more than 8 cores, you need more than 16 threads, don't worry. The £2,600 PC may well be the PC for you. So let's check that out. Ryzen 9 3900X and an RTX 2080 Ti. This is what you want if you want to flex. If you want to tell people, I've got 12 cores, I've got 24 threads, and I've got the most powerful graphics card on the market right now, other than the Titan RTX, which doesn't really count because it's not really a gaming graphics card. It's just a very powerful graphics card that's like for AI and stuff. With this 3900X, a lot of you may have noticed as well, I've not gone for any kind of all-in-one liquid coolers with these builds, so that is something I thought I'd do for a change. I usually generally favor towards all-in-one coolers because I think they look better, but I've kind of avoided it because they are generally more expensive and don't really perform any better than a really good kind of air cooler. So this PC right here, I would describe it as a performance focused PC. It's maybe not the best looking PC. It might not have the most kind of RGB or the most flair or design, but it is performance focused at its core. And obviously with that, we've got the 3900X, 12 core, 24 thread, absolute monster of a CPU, up for just £480, cheaper than that of the 9900K, and it crushes it in anything multi-threaded. The only thing that the 9900K has over it is its integrated graphics for a little bit of improved performance in Adobe Premiere, but if you don't edit videos in Premiere, it means nothing. And also the 9900K has a little bit better performance in some games, and some are very more Intel kind of focused than AMD focused, but then you can also get the titles which prefer AMD CPUs, and there's going to be definitely coming updates very soon which will kind of make use of more cores and more threads thanks to these AMD CPUs, and hopefully we will see them coming in the very near future. For the cooler, I've gone for the king of air coolers. The Noctua NH-U12A is the absolute undisputed champ in the CPU kind of cooler for air coolers region, whatever the word is, it is the best. The fans, I think, are the NF12x25 fans. The names are awful for Noctua products, but it's small. Other than the brown fans, it's fairly good looking. It's a solid made piece of kit, and at the end of the day, with Noctua coolers, you know you're getting solid reliability, amazing performance. All that you're sacrificing is having a bit of brown in your PC. But if you don't mind a bit of brown, then I know there's plenty of people that are out there that don't mind a bit of brown in their PC, then it's the ultimate option for air cooler. When it comes to the motherboard, I've not gone completely over the top. We've got a £265 motherboard from Gigabyte. It's the Aorus Pro X570 motherboard. ATX motherboard, again, we do have that little fan on there. We've got 4 DIMMs, we've got great power delivery, we've got the kind of reinforced armored PCIe slots, and we've got all the other features like USB 3.1 Gen 2 support for kind of PCs, and also on the rear a ton of USB ports, like I don't even know how many's there, 2, 4, 6, 10, plus HDMI, plus Wi-Fi. Yeah, you're getting a ton of features. You obviously get the RGB lighting as well, which we all know is a key feature when it comes to selling a PC. So yeah, Also get the amp up audio, which I believe Gigabyte have worked a bit harder on this year to kind of improve that, especially for the AMD side of motherboards. But as far as RAM goes, we've got 2 sets of G.Skill Trident Z RGB. This is where you're getting your RGB fixed right now. But it's more because I believe this has a CAS latency of 17 at that 3600 speeds. And for £132, to be honest, it looks pretty good as well. You could have got those G.Skill ones, the Ripjaws 5, I believe it was, from the previous build. Where are they gone? These ones. So you could have picked up these instead to maybe save a total of £60 overall. But the Trident Z, I don't know, I really like them. I've got them in my own PC. I think they look really nice. And if you're spending this much on your PC, maybe you probably should have gone for their £60 cheaper option. That's just those 2 red ones. If I was being completely performance focused, but you got to have some flair in your PC, especially if you've got the brown Noctua cooler. You need something to kind of bounce light off of that big brown thing. For storage, I've gone with another kind of Force MP510 SSD from Corsair. They're great value. I honestly can't really recommend you spending much more. I think they're about, for the 1TB one of these is about the same price as a 500 gig Samsung 970 EVO. So for me, I'd rather have a lot more SSD storage than maybe faster SSD storage. So that's just me. But if it is completely performance focused, I'd say go buy a PCIe Gen 4 one and spend triple that for the same amount of capacity. So if you're completely performance focused, yeah. But this is also keeping to a kind of set price point, and we're not trying to blow the budget completely and spend £5,000 upward for pure performance. But I've also chucked in a 3TB hard drive for £65. It's a Toshiba P300. Toshiba are pretty good. They're very reliable. They've been around for years. They know what they're doing. So £65 for 3TB of mass storage as well. You can't complain. Then for the GPU, RTX 2080 Ti. It's not going to be anything else. Maybe a 2080 Super will get very close to that for a lot less money, depending on how they perform, but we'll see. But right now, 2080 Ti is the ultimate king, and this Zotac gaming amp card is, end of the day, it's a quiet card, it's decent looking, it's got the triple fan design, it's going to be fairly cool. It may not look the best, it may not have as much RGB lighting as you may want, it may not be as, I don't know, it might not be as quiet once it hits maybe a certain speed, but that's also something you can adjust within kind of MSI Afterburner anyway. So then for the case, we've got another Fantex option. This is a case I actually really want to buy for myself, for my own kind of personal editing and gaming PC. This is the P600S. This is the white version. It's the cheapest one at the moment. It's kind of got that fabric mesh at the front, as well as that kind of removable front panel, which I like. If I want to focus on kind of keeping things quiet, I can leave that panel on. If a PC is just sat there idling, I can put the panel on, keep things a little bit more quiet. And if I'm rendering videos and gaming, then maybe I'll take that front panel off and let it really kind of blow that air into the system. We also get a great design interior. We get the kind of hinged tempered glass panel. We also get those weird kind of little cable cover things that Fantex use. I don't really like the looks of them. They're a little bit weird, but they're there. They're different at the end of the day. They're a nice option. And also you get a lot better cable management. Look at the size of those cable tie things. They're just ridiculous. And yeah, you get a ton more options with this case as opposed to the P350X, but it is twice the price. So what can you expect? Also get really easy to remove hard drive cages down at the bottom. You get 3 supports for SSD support right there on the rear of the motherboard. And you get 2 included fans, but I'll be honest, if you're spending this much on your PC, you probably will look to replace them. You don't need to, because you've got that Noctua cooler. You're going to do a pretty good job anyway with those. Oh, sorry, it does have 3 fans included, my bad. So you probably wouldn't even need to replace the fans. As far as front I/O goes, you've got the kind of hidden away USB ports at the front. I really like that design. It looks quite cool, quite stealthy. Just kind of slide it down or lift up the hatch. I can't remember which way it goes. As well as the kind of easy to install PSU bracket. And moving on to the PSU, we do have a Cooler Master 1200 watt 80 plus platinum unit for £123, I believe this is. Full modularity, tons and tons of expandability for the future. Obviously being a platinum grade power supply, very, very efficient. Maybe not the most cost effective, but if you are powering a 2080 Ti and a 3900X, I would recommend a beefy power supply as well as one that is very efficient and doesn't just kind of blow the budget as far as power delivery goes, and doesn't kind of cripple your electricity bill every time you start gaming on this thing. Also, it looks pretty stealth as well, so yeah, you've got to give Cooler Master that. But overall, for £2,600, it's an expensive buy, I'll admit that. But at the end of the day, you're getting 12 cores and 24 threads, and you're getting the most powerful gaming graphics card around. So generally, you can't complain with what you are getting there. And for me personally, I feel like the kind of best value here is that cheapest one, the £900 one, that Ryzen 5 3600, not 2600 anymore, and that 5700. They're both really, really good kind of FPS per dollar options, if you know what I mean. For the CPU, you're getting a lot of FPS for the price you're paying, and with that GPU, it's a similar story. It's outperforming the Nvidia parts at the same price, and with the CPU, you're outperforming the Intel parts at the same price. So overall, kind of great performance. As you start kind of moving up as far as gaming goes, the 9700K is a bit better than the 3700X, and also better than the 3900X as far as gaming goes. But with the 3900X, it gets kind of, a lot of the time, gets smashed about by the 9900K as far as gaming benchmarks go. But really, if you're spending this much money, you're gaming above 1080p. And for me, a lot of people really should be kind of gaming above 1080p if they're spending all this kind of money. I get there are people that obviously want to power 240 Hz 1080p monitors, and that's totally fine, but that number is very small. I'd imagine the kind of 1440p 120 Hz 144 Hz monitors are a lot more popular than a 240 Hz 1080p monitor, but that depends on your games and whatever games you play. If you want something very, very focused on performance and speed for maybe professional and more serious competitive gaming, well then the obvious choice is the higher refresh rate monitor. But if you are like me, you enjoy the visuals, you like the effects, you like the quality, you like the beautiful things, then yeah, 1440p is the way to go. And to be honest, all of these will perform pretty good at 1440p. May have to turn down the settings a little bit with that £900 system, but overall I'd imagine you'd probably be hitting well over 60 FPS quite easily. Anyway guys, thank you for watching. I've kind of rambled on a little bit in this video. I generally do with these kind of videos, but I'll be looking at maybe next month, seeing if I can kind of cut it down a little bit, make it a little bit more kind of refined, a little bit shorter. And also we'll be checking out probably by then some 5700 XT or 5700 custom coolers as well. Depending on whatever Nvidia do with their pricing, we may have to kind of keep using those Navi GPUs because they outperform them for the price. And if we can get some cooler and quieter ones, then it's a no-brainer. You're going to be choosing Navi over Turing for your kind of GPU needs if it is focused purely on FPS and you don't care about ray tracing and things like that. It's been a long video. I think I've spoken for about 40 minutes now. Obviously, I'll try and cut that down to as much as I can. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I hope any of this has been useful. I hope it provides some form of advice for you going forward. And if you decide this thing is a fairly useful thing for you, please do click that like button down below. I like hearing your comments. I believe on the last video we got quite a few comments, and it's nice to get the feedback from people of what they want to see maybe next month. Kind of leave your comments down below telling me what price points you want to see. Maybe it's a £400 PC or a £700 PC or a £5,000 PC, whatever it may be. Leave your comments down below. I believe 500 and 750 are kind of good options, very kind of budget orientated. And with the release of these new Ryzen CPUs, these older Ryzen CPUs are even cheaper. So yeah, that's good news all around. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give me the feedback down below. And if you decide my face hasn't offended you, click that subscribe button down below. And don't forget to click that little bell icon just next door so that you can get notifications as to when these videos go live. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.